Okay, so I've got this little Opinel knife and I've had it for a long time and I'd really like to have a little case for it. So I'm going to make a little case today out of this cheap piece of leather that I have laying around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet mold this so that it takes the perfect form of that little Opinel knife. And I'm going to use a product that I've got laying around the house that some of you might have laying around the house as well. And if you do, you'll be able to do this project too. First thing that I did is I went ahead and I wrapped the little Opinel knife in some plastic wrap. The piece of leather is very damp right now, and I'm going to just go ahead and slide it inside this little pre-cut pouch that I have for the FoodSaver. I've got a small piece of plywood. I'm going to be sliding in there as well so that it gives it a nice firm backing and the leather doesn't just wrap around the knife. So once I make sure everything fits inside this bag, let's go ahead and get this started. Once everything's inside the bag, I just kind of hook it up to the FoodSaver, make sure I form the leather around it as it seals it nice and tight to that piece of plywood I stuck in there. And we'll give it a nice shape of that knife, a perfect shape of that knife, if everything works out correctly. The process is done. It only takes a couple seconds, as anybody knows who's ever used a FoodSaver or anything like that. Go ahead and disconnect it, take her out, and see what she looks like. As you can see, the leather formed nicely around that little Opinel knife, and I'm just going to let it sit there and dry. Okay, like I said, we're going to go ahead and get her cut out now. You can see I let that dry for about a day or so. I kind of walked away from the project. Let's go ahead and get her cut out, and we'll see how this thing turned out. The leather pops right off the plywood there. And as you can see, it took the perfect form of that little Opinel knife. You can even see the metal rings where it tightened up around those. So it's going to be nice and form-fitting. Cheap little piece of leather. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut it down and, like I said, just make a cheap and dirty case out of this. I'm going to see how it turns out. Well, I am no leather worker by any stretch of the imagination, but as you can see, that little case that I made for the Opinel knife works out pretty well. And I've got a wet molded piece of leather that took me seconds to make as far as actually molding the form. So there it is. Maybe this gave you some ideas, maybe it didn't. Either way, hopefully, I'll see you on the next video. The video's over, you can go now. But hey, before you go, why don't you think about giving me a thumbs up like or maybe even leaving a comment below. You could consider subscribing to my channel. I know I'd really appreciate it.